Springfield's Talk 104.1. Welcome to the show. It is Thursday. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com through the KSGF app, also on YouTube. That video and audio feed sponsored by Springfield Wraps, who not only wrapped, but also designed the KSGF studio. Tomorrow morning, we will at Scramblers with the Friday Roadshow, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting. Also have a free breakfast for veterans. That, of course, thanks to Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, and Scramblers. So if you are a veteran, come out and join us for free breakfast. If you're not a veteran, come out anyway and just enjoy the company of others, including ourselves, as we do broadcast live from 6A to 9A. Doors do open at 6 o'clock. What many people... The judge in the political persecution case against Donald Trump continues to surprise even those who get what's going on in the brazen political nature of all of this, and what has taken aback even the experts that are hired by outlets like MSNBC and CNN say that they're shocked by some of this. They're confused by it. They don't understand. I don't think they should be. And I don't even know that they are. Now, they may be shocked that it is so overt because they know what's going on. Everyone knows what's going on. This is political. This has nothing whatsoever to do with the law. We have a Putin-style government in place that utilizes the justice system to go after political opposition, just like Putin does. I mean, he's not the only one, but... he's certainly high profile enough to recognize and to look at the mirror imaging that the Biden administration is of the Putin regime. So I think whenever they talk about they're surprised, they're shocked, they don't really understand why the judge is doing what the judge is doing, I believe it's more because it's so overt that there is generally amongst authoritarian regimes a little bit of cover that they try and give. They try to not be so obvious about it, and this judge is being obvious about it. And what is considered to be one of the more shocking aspects of this is the judge, it's not funny, but the judge has essentially told the jury, listen, you guys don't have to agree on what he's guilty on for him to be found guilty. You know, he did a little of this over here, a little of this over there, a little of this over here. And as long as all of you think that he did something wrong, even if it's not the same, you can go ahead and find him guilty. So this would be, to put it in more digestible terms here. Let's say that you are charged with robbery, leading police on a high-speed chase, and involuntary, manslaughter while in that chase. These are three charges you're facing. And it's all in the one trial. The prosecution claims that you robbed a liquor store, and then, while police were chasing you after the robbing of the liquor store, you led them on a high-speed chase, and then you, vehicular manslaughter, you ran over some elderly woman. And then, after the case is presented, the judge says, by the way, in order to find the defendant guilty of any of these different crimes, you all don't have to agree. So, for example, to find the defendant guilty of vehicular manslaughter, it doesn't matter whether you all believe he committed vehicular manslaughter, as long as you pick one of these things. It's like a mix and match. So if four of you don't believe, or even 8 of you don't believe that the defendant is guilty of vehicular manslaughter, but if 4 of you think he did rob the liquor store, and 4 of you do believe that he led police on a high-speed chase, that's enough. It doesn't matter. So what the judge has done here is literally instructed the jury in a manner that a majority of them can believe that Trump is innocent of these crimes, but still convict him. We'll play some of the audio of the mystified nature of some of these folks, and we've got Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, the whole lot of them, including one of Trump's attorneys taking on one of the Fox News hosts as they tried to claim that this has nothing whatsoever to do with the Biden administration. The Biden administration has no fingerprints on this, and the attorney was having none of that. All that coming up. A look at the weather as well. The rain that was potentially expected today does not look like that's going to happen, so pushed off a few days. First, the latest news update. The first alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals, from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny day, high near 81, 62 tonight, a 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon, only 72 for the high, and a chance of Saturday morning rain, then partly sunny, high near 78. The jury in the Trump trial was dismissed for the day after deliberating for hours requesting Pecker and Cohen testimony. The jurors also sent a note requesting to rehear the judge's instructions, and this is due to what no one regardless of political affiliation, can seem to figure out, and that is there are 34 different counts here, which means instruction on these 34 separate accounts. And whenever there are jury instructions given, they are put in written form because as a jury, you have a lot of information and you want them to be able to refer back to those jury instructions. This judge did not do that. He did not give them written instructions. And so this has required them at one point sending a note just to rehear them because for whatever reason, the judge would not give them in written form. How, and again, there's just all sorts of speculation. Why is this occurring? And you could speculate all day. Perhaps he did not want it to get out to the media what his instruction was, even though there are observers in the courtroom that can report on it. But if it's very, very lengthy, it can get lost in terms of the details and the nuance of the instruction. He perhaps is just trying to make it as difficult as possible for the jury, to which it becomes so convoluted and that they throw their hands up and like, well, we just know he's guilty. We don't understand. Banking on, you could say that could go either which way, that you could have a jury throw their hands up and say, this is so confusing. We aren't even being given written instructions on how to deal with this. We're being told that we can actually find him guilty without being unanimous in that verdict, and that they could throw their hands up and say, we have no choice but to find him not guilty. Given, though, that this is a jury of 90% Trump haters and the clear collusion in some capacity between the judge and the prosecution, that the hope here is that in all the confusion and the inability to make a real legal approach to, or take a legal approach to this, that they'll throw up their hands and say, well, we know he's guilty of something. I mean, it's Donald Trump. You watch the news. It's just clear. It's obvious. Even the judge knows he's guilty. This is almost some sort of formality. And so we've pretty much even been told we don't have to understand why. And they have been told that. And the potential reason for the judge to not give them written instruction is to make it more confusing for them so that they do just that. They just give up and say he's guilty, whatever. This is Andrew McCarthy yesterday on Fox News talking about what is clear to him and so many others, an outright collusion between the judge and the prosecutor.
Could beat the charges. But to my mind, it's not the charges that she'd have a hard time with. It's the proceeding in which the judge is kind of colluding with the prosecutors. And I don't say that lightly because it's a heavy-duty allegation to make about a judge. But look, everybody in America who knows anything about the criminal law, including the judge himself, knows that Michael Cohen's guilty pleas to campaign finance crimes are not admissible against President Trump. They're simply not. That's black letter criminal law. And Judge Merchan allowed the prosecutors to bring that to the jury's attention over and over and over again, to the point where I think the jury thinks they don't have to worry about that being proved because it's an established fact in the case.
There is a common acknowledgement here that there are numerous black and white, clear reasons for this all to be overturned, to which many people would say, why would a judge do this? What is the point in all this? What is coming into focus as the starkness of this is coming to the surface is this is all about one thing. There is no, right now, in the immediate future anyhow, of course, they'd love to see Donald Trump thrown in prison, as long as that prevented him from getting elected. But the recognition at this point is that this is about one thing and one thing only: giving the Biden campaign and the media the ability to, in all of their coverage and campaign stops, to call Donald Trump a convicted felon. That's all this is about. and recognizing that in all likelihood, though it is considered to be without question something that's going to be overturned, that isn't going to happen until after the election. And so at this point, there is one goal and one goal only, and that is to hand the Biden campaign that the ability to label Donald Trump as a convicted felon, the ability of the media to go out and pound away convicted felon, and to have legal experts come on. What does this mean? What does it mean for the country? Can we really have a convicted felon be president of the United States? What if he goes to, and to create all of these reasons, their attempt to create all of these reasons in the minds of the American people to say, well, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, it just, even if I believe that he's being persecuted politically, I don't know if we can get through this as a country. There's too many unknowns here. And to create just enough doubt by labeling him as convicted felon, that will help the Democrats block the American people from selecting Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. There's more audio coming up from CNN and MSNBC in just a couple of moments, and it's all, again, noting, it may not be as stark as Andrew McCarthy's analysis here, that this just doesn't make sense. The judge's instructions don't make sense, and that there is obvious reasons for this all to be overturned. Across the board, virtually every analyst on networks from middle of the road, right wing, all the way to left wing, noting the bizarre nature of the judge's instructions, including the fact that he evidently just refused to write them down, leaving the jury with even more information to try to sift through in their minds. I believe that there's a good chance this is to cause the jury as much confusion as possible, that they will just default to the narrative that Trump is clearly guilty. And some of the polling, not all of it, but some of the polling, leans towards people believing that he is. Now, CNN, actually, we've got some audio on that also, shows that 46% of people they polled feel that Trump did something illegal. They don't know exactly what, And that was polling that was done at the beginning of the trial and at the end. So there's been no shift whatsoever. But being New Yorkers, I believe that there's a good chance that the judge is just hoping that with the mass confusion, they're not going to be able to figure any of this out. And so the default will be, well, we've got to find him guilty because we just know he is. He's Donald Trump. Plus, we don't want to be out there answering questions as to why it was that we found him not guilty, particularly living in New York. CNN analysts also shocked by the judge's instructions yesterday.
The jury must be overwhelmed. I mean, to have all of these instructions just read to them without them getting a copy is going to be overwhelming for them. And also, it's crazy that the lawyers were not able to discuss the instructions in their closings yesterday. Typically, lawyers can go through the instructions and explain why they've met them or why the government hasn't met them. And they weren't able to do that yesterday, which I find bizarre. I think the lawyers should have been able to do that because the jurors right now must be wondering, what is this all about?
And then over on MSNBC, which has proven to be even more insanely radical and to the left than CNN, even they, with an ex-judge as an expert, surprised about some of the instructions provided by the judge.
Yeah, a couple of things did stand out to me. One is that there were a couple of spaces in the jury instructions where the judge actually pointed the jury to specific pieces of evidence and said, these are pieces of evidence you can consider, for example, in trying to determine whether there were falsified business records. You can look at these bank records. You can look at these invoices. That was a surprise to me because generally jury instructions don't include references to specific pieces of evidence that the judge seems to be pointing the jury to. Those who practice New York law may have some other take on this, but that was a little bit of a surprise.
Now, that is a judge on MSNBC, former judge, touching on one of the observations from Andrew McCarthy, he's a former federal prosecutor, on Fox News, and noting that not only was the judge doing that and essentially trying to do the prosecutor's job in pointing out to the jury, hey, you can do this, that some of it was blatantly wrong. Including utilizing the guilty plea by Cohen when it comes to records and so forth as evidence in their decision. And as McCarthy noted, that's just black and white law. I mean, there's no gray area for that. What anyone can at this point say other than this is what the justice system has been turned into under Democrat leadership. It has been used, much like Putin uses his justice system or any other tyrant uses their justice system to go after political opposition. I mean, when you have these left-wing networks that you look at MSNBC, that is a network that they all are such extreme lefties that when the network hired a moderate Republican, the former director of the RNC, to be a voice during the campaign season to explain the Republican perspective, they all pitched such a fit, she was fired. If that network is having on experts that are saying this does not make sense, then it is so obviously clear. I wonder, actually, I do know the answer to this. Rhetorically, I was going to say, I wonder what people who believe the media and who have been convinced Trump is guilty, they don't know of what exactly, or they may think of paying Stormy Daniels, that's not a crime. And that's not what he's being accused of in court, charged with. What are they thinking as they watch this, as they see their people that they swallow everything that they shovel out, as they give this analysis? What are they thinking? And I actually know the answer to that is they just don't. They just sort of ignore it because Trump is Hitler, of course. And so that means that we have to upend everything that this country is about. We have to dismiss the validity of elections. We have to dismiss the validity of political persecute or not politically persecuting individuals. We have to dismiss the validity of an equal justice system. We have to, in other words, completely dismantle and destroy, quote, democracy in order to save it. They're almost martyrs, these individuals. They are such supporters of freedom and liberty. They have to destroy it all in order to save it. Now, I know you recognize that makes no sense whatsoever, but that's the schizophrenic approach that people take while trying to justify their irrational behavior. Coming up, audio from Trump lawyer Alina Habba. She was on The Story with Shannon Bream, and Shannon Bream claimed that there was no connection between the Biden White House, the Biden administration, and this persecution of Trump. And as you can imagine, Alina Habba had some stark disagreement with her. That next. I'm Nick Reed. The First Alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements, from Color 10, Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny day today, 81 for a high, 62 overnight low. A 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon with a high near 72, and then Saturday, chance of rain in the morning, then partly sunny, high near 78. Trump attorney Alina Habba was on Fox News Channel's The Story yesterday, in which guest host Shannon Bream asserted that there was no connection between the Biden administration and this the current case that is going on in New York.
Listen, but the Biden administration is not responsible for this trial.
How can you say the Biden administration is not responsible?
It's a state.
For this trial?
It's a state trial. It's Alvin Bragg. Whether you think there's a political motive for him, it's not connected to the DOJ. I mean,
Shannon,
the feds passed on these election charges.
Shannon, you should look at how many logs they have of state officials, Letitia James, Fannie Willis, visiting the White House, and then tell me that this is not a Biden trial. I don't care.
Feds pass on this case is the point I'm
You're
making.
right. The feds passed on this case. Also, DA Cy Vance passed on this case. And
Years
frankly,
ago, and then it came back.
And Bragg passed on this case. You know when it came back? When he decided to run for office. So tell me how that's not an indication that Joe Biden, who just sent his campaign down here with Robert De Niro yesterday, isn't a part of this. Frankly, any question that we had of that was squashed yesterday. And if you have even more concerns about whether he's involved in this, look at the fact that he is publicizing, literally publicizing for tonight to have a speech if a verdict comes out. That's a sad state of affairs.
Now, I don't have any idea what Shannon Bream on Fox News is thinking, unless she's trying to claim that, well, there's no email that directly links him to that. But if we're not going to suspend common sense here, I mean, come on. It was noted there by Alina Habba that it wasn't until Biden was running for re-election that this, and all of this stuff came up. This is a fact that oftentimes gets overlooked. In fact, one of the many criticisms for this current case is that one of the charges is past the statute of limitations anyhow. And that's because the accusation is from so long ago. I mean, it was so far in the past that has already passed. So why all of a sudden, while Joe Biden is running for re-election, does this come up? I mean, the answers are obvious. This is part of the frustration. And I imagine this is what citizens in countries like Russia, under Putin, deal with. It's a situation where everyone knows it, but there's nothing you can do about it. You just throw up your hands and you recognize that Putin, he's going to put political opposition in prison. He is going to make sure, using the legal system, in the name of national security, of course, among other things, and rooting out corruption and nobody's above the law, that no one who is a serious challenger to his power will ever be selected or have the ability to be selected at the ballot box by the Russian people. And I think this is, for a lot of people, this is where we are in this country today. It's just so clear. It's obvious. Everyone knows what's going on. People on the left know what's going on, people on the right, but we just pretend as if, oh, no, this has no political implications. There's no political push behind this whatsoever, and we just play this game. And I think some of that is because Americans feel as if we're hopeless against it. What can we do? And I suppose the answer is it is going to be at the ballot box. And I do believe that Trump can win. I've noted this before. And I want to note it in this context because when the corruption is clear and obvious and it's still allowed to occur, it does cause a sense of hopelessness, and it does cause one to throw their hands up and say, what's the point? There's no point in even participating when it comes to voting because they're not going to allow the American people to make this decision. And that is given, especially for those of you who recognize all of the ballot harvesting that took place, the Democrats in a number of different positions, oftentimes Secretary of State, allowing votes to be counted that were not legally allowed to be counted. And we have, fortunately, the Electoral College system. And the numbers show that Biden ultimately, when you look at the Electoral College version of things and how, again, we select a president, it was about 21,000 votes that made the difference. And that was with all the shenanigans. And that was with a significant portion of the American population who they felt as if Getting rid of Trump was going to make things steady. It was going to eliminate all of the chaos, and that we were going to go back to this happy time in which there was no chaos and we didn't worry about what was going on in Washington, D.C. And clearly that has not occurred. In fact, there's a latest poll. It's 70-some% of Americans feel that under Biden, things in this country are out of control. And based off of polling and feedback from people who may have voted for Trump in 2016 but then voted for Biden in 2020, the reason that they did it was because they were tired of the chaos. Well, clearly, that did not go away. So in addition to not getting rid of the chaos, we also have inflation. We also have high gas prices. We also have an open border. We also have, kids being kicked out of schools, making a priority for illegal aliens. We also have our involvement in Ukraine. We also have what is going on in Israel with Gaza. And so when you start looking at it, the reasons that some people switched from Trump to Biden are reasons that clearly have boomeranged and flipped around. So when you take that into consideration, and you recognize that it was that the three states that Biden eked out to win, it was ultimately just a difference of, I think it was 21,000 votes. May have been a little less than that, but it was somewhere in that ballpark. That, that is not that many people that have to switch their vote. And it is because of those factual bits of information, even when you throw into the mix any sort of corruption that occurred, there is a very, very strong reason to recognize that Trump can win this election as long as Americans don't give up and do what occurs in countries like Iran and Russia, where they throw up their hands and say, it doesn't matter, the system is rigged. I just don't think it's rigged enough at this point. And that's a decision that's going to be made in November. Speaking of that, CNN audio in which you have a number cruncher being asked, why is it that people seem to not be changing their assessment here, changing their mind on Trump when it comes to these trials? Slightly Stupid and Dirty heads to perform at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena August 31st, joined by special guests Hyrie and the Expendables. That you can get details at ksgf.com and get registered for your chance to win tickets to see them live in concert. This bit of audio is from CNN yesterday, and it was, you got a number cruncher there as the number expert guy, and he's noting that when it comes to their polling of people, at the beginning of this trial, 46% of people they talked to think that Trump may have done something illegal. Now, they don't talk about asking them what they think he did illegal, but just because of what is the big lie, and that is over and over again, portraying it as if it's clear he did something illegal without even identifying it, you get 46% of Americans that just believe it. What they found is that their recent polling, after all of the closing statements and everything that are made, closing arguments, that number hasn't changed. They have not been able to increase it, and the CNN number cruncher was asked, well, why do you think that is? What could be the reason for that?
Yeah, I think the question is, what's exactly cooking here? Why hasn't there been much of a change? Well, folks like you and me, real news junkies, might be paying really close attention to what's going on. The fact is, most Americans don't really care that much. So closely following news about economy inflation, that's number one at 65%. Look at immigration, 52%. Election legitimacy, 49%. Abortion, 47%. All the way down on this list of issues tested by the Ipsos Knowledge Panel is Trump's court cases at 42%, significantly less than economy and inflation. The fact is, John, when we're looking at these numbers, what we see is Americans' minds aren't changing. And a big reason why Americans' minds aren't changing is at this particular point, John, they are tuned out of the conversation.
Why might that be? It is a combination of reasons, and it is reflected in polling. That polling and other polling. Now, the polling there is because, listen, when in a 3-year period time, over a 3-year period, your income in terms of buying power is slashed by thousands and thousands of dollars as an average American, that becomes a priority. When you, and I think this is a large part of the reason that Trump is getting a higher percentage of minorities supporting them than Republicans have in the past, including Trump, is because these are parents that have been disproportionately, or individuals as parents who have disproportionately been impacted by illegal immigration. These are individuals that have been told, sorry, you can't send your kids to school because the school is being used to house illegals. Or your kid has, some sort of disease, which there have been outbreaks, particularly Chicago, of diseases that have virtually been eradicated here in the United States, but have been reintroduced because of illegals coming into this country. When you are talking about people whose children's lives have been impacted, their own lives have been impacted, that frustration, and then being told by the people who are in power, it's not our fault, and telling them, you don't know what you're talking about, you have it great. It's not surprising that they don't find Trump trials to be a priority in their lives. Secondly, consistently, a majority of Americans also recognize that this is political persecution. Poll after poll that have been done, and there haven't been a tremendous amount of polls because they don't show what the media wants, and that is people know what's going on here. Particularly Republican and independent voters, and a lot of Democrat voters say this is just for politics. This is because he is running for re-election. This is because he is the biggest obstacle to the Democrats keeping control of things right now. When you combine those two factors, it should not be a surprise that increasingly people are acknowledging, I don't care what happens in this trial. I mean, you think about it for a moment. If you're in an airplane and the airplane is just, it's headed towards the earth, and you have a pilot in the pilot seat that you just observed as not being really great at the job, and there happens to be another pilot on the airplane that you are familiar with that had a pretty good track record, and then a decision is made, should we allow that pilot to take over? Oh, but that pilot's under investigation for bank record irregularities. Is that going to factor into your decision? Of course not. Because priorities. Because you're hurling towards the ground. Because there's utter chaos, and it's a do-or-die moment. And increasingly, Americans are recognizing that not only are things not getting better, but they are not going to get better. They're only going to get worse under this administration, particularly if they start paying attention to some of the things that Biden says he's going to do in his second term, like raise taxes on everyone. A forecast released by Decision Desk HQ in the Hill, this was yesterday, gives Trump a 58% chance of winning back the White House, even considering everything that's going on. Not only that, but their analysis now shows that the Republican Party is favored to win a majority in the House and the Senate. I'll read through you that coming up here. Just the News has a piece on it. Again, this is a forecast that was released yesterday by Decision Desk Headquarters and The Hill. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk and text line 447-KSGF. A forecast released by Decision Desk Headquarters in the Hill gives Trump a 58% chance of winning back the White House. Former President Trump and the Republican Party favored to win the White House and the majority in the House and take back the Senate less than 6 months until Election Day. This according to a forecast model published yesterday. The forecast model, released by, again, Decision Desk HQ in the Hill, gives Trump that 58% chance. It shows him leading slightly in most of the swing states. The GOP currently has a 79% chance of taking back the U.S. Senate and a 64% chance of maintaining the House majority, according to the forecast model. Now, I know what many of you are thinking. Many of you are thinking that the Republicans, and this has become a standard and accurate cliche, the Republican Party seems to have this ability to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. In other words, even the midterm elections last time around, it should have just been an absolute no-brainer, and this continued just inability to win in an environment in which it should just be a walk is something that greatly frustrates the Republicans. And the Republican establishment likes to blame that on Donald Trump. But I think what you're going to find is quite the opposite here. And I think what you're going to find, what we're all going to find, is also what occurred in 2016. And that is Trump will have an enthusiastic base that he did in 2016, and they're going to get out there and they're going to vote down ticket Republican. Under normal conditions, I would worry more about the GOP screwing this up and blowing these odds of not only keeping the House, but losing control of the Senate. Now, this doesn't obviously mean that things can't end up going haywire and wacky and turn around, or that you'll have some idiot who's running screw something up. 2016 was not only a shock to the political system because Donald Trump won, but because of how long his coattails were. And many people will say, yes, but 2020. And I argue again, you just, with 2020 and COVID and the presentation that was given, that Donald Trump is chaotic and the United States is chaotic under Donald Trump, and Joe Biden is the steady hand. The adults are back in the room. We heard that verbiage over and over again, and that caused a lot of switchover. It caused a lot of swing voters and even some Democrats who voted for Trump not to do it the second time around, and that also hurt down ballot. But right now, Donald Trump diminishes the likelihood that these Republicans that are hoping to maintain control of the House and take control of the Senate, Donald Trump's existence in this race increases the likelihood that they will hold on to that and decreases the likelihood that they'll screw it up. So, again, the party that ultimately trashes on Trump and hates Trump could potentially thank the November victories, thank Trump for those victories, though I don't think they'll ever admit it. Wilder RV, Clinton, Missouri. You may think to yourself, never really had a reason to go to Clinton, Missouri. I've driven through it on my way to Kansas City, and I've seen that huge lot with all sorts of RVs. That's Wilder RV there. And that 85-mile drive is a short drive compared to where people drive from all over the country, people that will update and purchase their RVs from Wilder RV, or maybe first-timers because of their reputation. And much of that, and this is what appeals to me, and one of the reasons that I recommend them to you, is they aren't, quote, selling you. If you've ever been to a lot in which they do, you know what it's like. You know, they try to high pressure you. They're a little evasive about how much it's actually going to cost you because they add fees on at the end. They follow you around. You can't even go look in one without them having a key to let you in. That's not how Wilder RV operates. They're very low-key, and frankly, they don't have to operate that way, because they have developed a reputation of being solid and having a good selection and being transparent. And so this is a kind of an interesting thing that happens when you do a fantastic job with your goods and services and you treat your customers at a higher level, then that actually builds your business. And they found that that's their model. And that's one of the reasons that I recommend Wilder RV. You can find them online, wilderrv.com, ksgf.com, also under Nick's endorsements. There's been a little bit of controversy regarding Richard Dreyfuss and an event that he was doing, I believe somewhere up east. It was one of these deals where they were running Jaws and the 30th anniversary or whatever the anniversary of Jaws. And so he's there and does kind of a Q&A sort of thing. And there have been all sorts of stories about the fact that he was making offensive comments that triggered the audience that are described as being anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ and anti-lefty stuff. Richard Dreyfuss is also scheduled to perform at that Nix's Ado Center. And now they are evaluating whether or not he will still be invited to come speak. There's a newsleader headline, Richard Dreyfuss event at Nix's Ado Center in question after actor's offensive rant. They write at this point, actor Richard Dreyfuss is still scheduled to appear September 11th. At Nix's Ados Center for the Performing Arts. Whether that remains true is under review. The general manager confirmed Wednesday that moving forward with the event is in question after the award-winning actor allegedly made offensive, homophobic, and misogynistic comments during a May 25th Q&A following a screening of Jaws in Massachusetts. Zach Rance, who manages the facility, in addition to his duties as the chief communication officer for Nixa Public Schools, said, "We're talking with Dreyfuss's management and trying to get a better understanding of what happened. We'll make a decision from there." An Evening with Richard Dreyfuss event scheduled for May 9th in Nixa was rescheduled for September 11th so the actor could attend the Cannes Film Festival. USA Today reported that Dreyfuss appeared Saturday at the Cabot Theater in Massachusetts as part of a screening of Steven Spielberg's beloved 1975 shark thriller Jaws. A video circulating on social media showed Dreyfuss started the Q&A by appearing on stage in a floral dress, which he wore over a button-down shirt and pants. It's unclear if there is a video of the Q&A that followed or even a transcript. But USA Today reported Dreyfuss went on a rant that included criticism of working with Barbra Streisand, the Academy Award diversity effort, the Me Too movement, and transgender youth. J. Casey Soward, executive director of the venue, denounced Dreyfuss's comments in a statement noting that it did not, quote, reflect the values of inclusivity and respect. Quote, "We regret that an event that was meant to be a conversation to celebrate an iconic movie instead became a platform for political views. We take full responsibility for the oversight in not anticipating the director of the conversation, or the direction rather of the conversation, and for the discomfort that it caused many patrons." Tickets for the Nixa event go on sale Monday, and Rance said no changes will be made until the center obtains more information, saying we're moving forward. We're not going to overreact. We want to make an informed decision. Rance said if the event is canceled after the tickets go on sale, refunds will be issued. At the Nixa event, the award-winning actor is expected to talk about the 40-year career in Hollywood and his offstage passions, especially civic engagement. And then it talks a little bit beyond there about, some other things and Priscilla Presley being a guest at that venue and so forth. Now, number one, the comment here from the person who runs the Cabot Theater, in which he made whatever the comments are he made, noting that they regretted that their event was used as a platform for political views. Let's not make any mistake about it. The only regret here is that they were not political views that fell in line with the left. I mean, it is almost a requirement at an event in which you have lefty artists that they, talk about Trump, talk about how awful Trump is, talk about MAGA Americans. So this isn't, in all likelihood, a disappointment that Richard Dreyfuss said things that were, quote, political, but he doesn't understand the right things to say. And this is what has happened with the cultural bubble that more than any bubble lacks diversity, and that is the Hollywood bubble, where you have to believe certain things. And if you do not believe these certain things, then you will be cleansed from the bubble so that there is one vision, one accepted thought process and belief system. It's ironic because the people we find in this country, and Hollywood is a tremendous example of this, who fancy themselves to be all about diversity are the ones who lack diversity to the largest degree, who demand conformity of thought. The other thing about this, and I have read numerous stories, most of them that are written, you can tell, in a manner that is supposed to lead the reader to the understanding that Richard Dreyfuss is wrong and a horrible person. But what I have yet to find is any, and I'm not saying they don't exist, but I haven't been able to find him, any article that says what he actually said. No video, no transcript, no, I haven't even seen anyone quoted as saying this is what he said. I've seen people quoted as saying, well, he made homophobic remarks, he made misogynistic remarks, he made anti-trans remarks, but they don't say what he said. Now that's a red flag. And what that usually means is that there is a recognition that the person who is being accused of saying all sorts of horrible things said things that are actually in line with what most people believe, but are considered to be out of line of the extreme left. But they recognize that most normal people won't find it overtly offensive, so they don't tell you what he actually said. I mean, you know how they are. They can't wait, even if it's out of context, to tell you when somebody says something that they find offensive. Yet this Richard Dreyfuss situation, the numerous stories I've come across, and there aren't equal, and that's what the news leader here even reflects on, is that the center in Nixa is saying, well, we're trying to find out exactly what he said. Nobody seems to know. Yet, does this stop the media? I mean, if I'm media, that would be the story, right? I would not even write a story unless I found out what it was he said. Otherwise, it's like writing a story about somebody who calls up and says, I saw something really bad happen, and it involved Mayor McCheese. And they're like, well, what was it? Well, I'm not going to give you details of it, but I just want you to write a story about the fact that he did something or he said something really bad. Well, what did he say? Well, it was just really bad stuff. Would you write a story about that? No. Unless you found out exactly what the quotes were. Yet that has not stopped outlet after outlet after outlet writing stories, blasting him as being homophobic, blasting him of being transphobic, and all these things without offering any evidence that he actually said anything that could be characterized that way by a normal person. Now, credit to the center in Nixa for saying, hey, we're just trying to figure out, I mean, they could say this is nonsense, and unless someone shows us what he said that is overtly offensive, then, we're not even going to bother ourselves with this, or even go so far as to say, yeah, sometimes people say things that other people, we need to, that's part of conversation. I mean, how boring anyhow. The whole point of an event like this is supposed to be to listen to the thoughts of a person, but we're going to make sure that it's so sanitized they don't say anything that might give you some sort of triggering reaction. I mean, how boring the left wants this world to be. So while it may not be the greatest approach taken by the center, I still give them at least a B or B plus in saying, hey, we're looking into this to see exactly what has been said, see if we can find out what's said, and we're not, going to make any sort of decisions until then. So kudos for that approach. But it's just crazy to me that you can have story after story after story written about someone because of something they said, yet those stories don't say what he actually said. It's like having a Sports Illustrated or Playboy magazine that is all about having attractive women in it, but then you decide not to put any pictures in it. Does that make any sense? Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Latest news update. The First Alert forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny with a high near 81 today. Clouds 62 for a low tonight. 70% chance of showers, thunderstorms in the afternoon tomorrow. High near 72. And Saturday, a chance of rain in the morning, then partly sunny with a high near 78. One final thought about all of this coverage and outrage over what Richard Dreyfuss said without any reporting as to what he actually said. That doesn't mean that he didn't say something that even normal people would find to be offensive. The problem is we don't know. Because apparently, in order for a story, and USA Today had a story on this, and a number of other, mainstream outlets had stories on this, that they don't require the substance of a story to even exist in their story for the story to be written. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Latest traffic update. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Looking for a new gun shop that has inventory they won't find anywhere else? Well, you found it with Quick Draw Gun in Monette. One name that you will see whenever you go down there is Live Free Armory, and that is a veteran-owned company based out of Florida. And like I just said, Quick Draw Gun in Monette is the only dealer in Southwest Missouri. And I do also want to mention this. It doesn't matter if you are an avid firearm collector or you are ready to take the plunge and purchase your first ever firearm. Quick Draw Gun in Monette is going to give you the best customer service, whatever your knowledge or level of expertise is. Plus, they don't pressure you into buying one thing over another. There's no high pressure sales, which is one thing that I really appreciated whenever I purchased my first ever firearm. If you haven't taken a trip down there, the shop, it's pretty easy to find and it's worth the drive down there. It's a quick drive down 60, about an hour or so away. And for all those questions that you may have, or maybe you're out there looking for something specific, go ahead and give Brad and his team a call today. Now, you can find all of the contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
There's almost daily, there are stories about specifically California, but throughout the country, normal people that are outraged because of the cost of fast food restaurants. And in California, it has been punctuated to a more stark degree because of the minimum wage increase out there that increased the cost of doing business. And where do businesses get their money in order to continue to run? From the consumer. That's where the money comes from. So if it costs more for your business to operate, that means you have to get more money. And that comes from the consumers. And so it's just one of the latest stories. Customers condemn $21 Subway sandwich amid California minimum wage hike, and talks about already the country facing the inflation, everything costing more. But out in California, the additional financial punishment of requiring companies to pay more for entry-level employees. Now, if you listen to the Biden administration, of course, they claim it's greedy corporations doing this. They're the ones that they are doing this. But lead it to the Biden administration to take an industry that once upon a time the left would characterize and did characterize as targeting poor people and make that industry to where poor people can't even afford it. And for the longest time, and this was to a degree a Michelle Obama thing and some others, that these fast food restaurants, because they were inexpensive, they were more likely to have people purchase their products that were lower income because lower income people could afford it. And because those restaurants did not necessarily focus on salads and other more healthy items, they were targeting lower income people. There was that film that I never watched it. It was called a documentary where the guy claimed that all he did was, in his lifestyle change, eat McDonald's every day for 30 days, and all these horrific things happened to him. His liver function, so forth, went down, which he would later admit it was because he was an alcoholic and drinking. And in fact, all of that stuff turned out not to be an accurate portrayal of what happens if you eat at McDonald's for 30 days. But nonetheless, documentaries like that became very popular because these particular restaurants, these industries of fast food, or good food fast, were accused of targeting lower income because and taking advantage of the fact that they were the only restaurants that some lower income people could afford. Leave it to the Democrats, though, to take that and turn it into something that is unaffordable for the lower class, something that is barely affordable for the middle class and ultimately is still affordable for the upper class, which once again shows that it's the upper class in this country and the uber wealthy who are not negatively impacted by Democrat policies in this country, which is why you have people like Robert De Niro out there telling you that you need to support Joe Biden. Speaking of, you want to talk about perfect illustration of the elites and the total and complete lack of empathy for people who are suffering under the Biden administration. John Legend, you know John Legend, he's a singer. He's very outspokenly liberal because, he's a rich singer. Claims that black voters leaving Biden because of masculinity and disinformation on the economy, telling them that the economy is actually very, very good. Now, he's talking to specifically black people, but this is something that clearly is not isolated to the black population. All Americans, other than people who are in his income bracket, are suffering. He says, I hear a lot of misinformation and disinformation about the economy under Trump and what's happened since. To be clear, the economy's doing quite well. And so he's telling as a black person, he has the authority to tell other black people how they're supposed to vote, that they're just wrong when it comes to the economy. And this is the consistent illustration of the uber wealthy thinking everything's just fine because they don't feel it. And for a segment of the population that fancies themselves being so compassionate and caring so much and attaching themselves to this cause and that cause, this is a demonstration they don't ultimately care about other people. They care about marketing themselves as being associated with this charity, associated with that charity, but they only care about it in as far as it promotes their career so that they can ultimately make even more money than they already do as 0.01 percenters. Because it's all about the money. And this is the real problem I have with it. It's not that these individuals have stupid amounts of money. I think that's awesome. Contrary to people like Barack Obama, who has more money than most people could ever even fathom, out there claiming that you only need so much money because he's a lying hypocrite. I think it's great that you can have that much money. And I don't think that anyone should be able to tell you, well, there's a certain amount according to me. So it isn't that, but it's that they tell people who don't have that much money to get over it and to vote for people that will continue to make it even more difficult for them to live at the income level that they otherwise might be. I mean, the arrogance, the narcissism, and the complete and total lack of empathy of people like John Legend and Robert De Niro and all of these others who in no way, shape, or form suffer, economically speaking, because of their lot in life, demanding that people do suffer just to satisfy their own political needs and desires. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Got a traffic update coming up in mere moments, standing by, in fact. But I wanted to make it dovetails with the point I was making about how the fast food industry used to be characterized by the left as targeting lower income and just known as, for a night out, that's where lower income people went if they wanted a night out for dinner. and turning that into a place that they can no longer afford. And you were citing a poll, Sarah, that said 80% of people now see fast food as luxury.
Yeah, Lending Tree came out with the poll earlier this week, and 80% of Americans say it's a luxury item.
Well, Democrat policies really, really helping the working man out. I mean, just tremendous work done. It's constantly amazing to me that people will do this sort of damage to themselves and people that they claim that they care, and just denial, total denial. And it really is, for all of the finger pointing that Trump supporters are like cult members. Let's talk about the behavior of cult members, and let's do some real comparing and contrasting. When you're someone that you consistently follow someone who does tremendous damage to you, and you still say, nope, that's the person who wants to take care of me the most, and you continue to support them despite the fact that life gets worse when their policies start impacting you, that tends to fall a little more into that category. Springfield's Talk 1041, latest traffic. First Alert Forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Mostly sunny, 81 for a high today, 62 tonight, 70% chance of showers, thunderstorms in the afternoon Friday, 72 for a high, and Saturday a chance for rain in the morning, then partly sunny, a high near 78. I want to make a point about a posting I saw regarding, I'm saying it out loud so I hopefully don't forget it, where someone, whenever corporations have record profits, that's not inflation. Actually, it is in many instances. But first, a text that came in on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. Dang it, I thought Super Size Me was a pretty good documentary. Sucks. Now that I have to do some research, possibly change my mind. Just goes to show that sociology professors who encouraged watching it don't always have pure motives. Well, yeah, that's definitely true. So the reason, actually, that I was reading an article, I think maybe it was in Variety or Hollywood Reporter, some outlet. The guy that was behind that documentary, he died recently at the age of 53, and this was preceded by some confessions, if you will, that during that whole period of time, in fact, he had said or acknowledged at one point that he was drunk during the entire production of that documentary. And that when he had presented, it was sort of a confession, and I don't know if it's because he saw the end of his life coming or what the motivation was, but that his portrayal was he was an otherwise healthy person with no health problems, and he wasn't doing anything differently. All he was doing was eating McDonald's every day for 30 days, and this caused all of these issues. In the documentary, his doctor told him you've got these liver problems, and what he confessed is that he was an alcoholic. That's where that came from, and he again said even during the filming of that, he doesn't think he was sober a single day of it. And that's where a lot of the weight gain came from, and the liver issues, and I believe that he even had a couple of projects that were potentially in the works in which they got dropped because of his confessions of the alcohol abuse, and there were a number of other admissions that he made that didn't have anything necessarily to do with his health, but that he was in full confession mode, and he never in his entire life had a relationship that he didn't cheat on. The person that he would tell in 1 minute, yeah, I love you, I'm devoted to you, and then the next minute be cheating on them. And he just went through this period of time, evidently, in which there was a lot of confession made. But, the lesson to be learned here, I would say, is much like a number of Michael Moore documentaries. If you make a documentary that simply validates the emotional feeling that people on the left have, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. They will not question it. They will not dissect it. They will not fact check it to see whether or not the claims that are being made are in a scientific manner. All you have to do is make the claim, and if it reinforces their emotional reaction to something like, ooh, fast food is awful, these horrible corporations, McDonald's is terrible, and it preys on people and takes poor people and makes them unhealthy, and a documentary comes along and says, yeah, look at this, that's all it takes. I mean, it's just validation for the left. And that is the lesson that I think can come away from the popularity of a documentary or a so-called documentary like Super Size Me. So even though it turns out that it was a scam and it was built upon lies, we now know because of the confessions of the guy who put it all together, there's still something that we can get from it and we can learn from. And that is, if it's validating a left belief, be very, very, very suspicious of it. Now, the posting that I saw, and I just wanted to make 2 points on it regarding inflation. And Democrats, their approach, of course, on one hand is to tell you that inflation, you're not actually feeling it. But if that doesn't work, then it is, well, it's because of corporations and small businesses too. I mean, you can't, if the increase in prices is something that is a result of greed, you cannot just isolate it to major corporations, because it's not as if fast food restaurants have had all their prices going up, but if you go into a locally owned restaurant, their prices are exactly what they were 3 years ago. That hasn't happened. So you have to believe this conspiracy that every single business owner in existence, including those that hate Donald Trump, including small businesses that are run by leftist fanatics, that they all conspired to jack up the prices and take advantage of you, not when you're doing really, really well, but when you're already struggling, because that makes sense. And you have to believe that not a single person has been a whistleblower to reveal this vast conspiracy that has resulted in shrinkflation and inflation. This person that I know had posted a comment, and it was associated with a picture, saying that whenever corporations are experiencing record profits, that's not inflation. That's greed. Well, not exactly, see. There are two reasons, or let's say two instances, in which a company can have record profits and not actually be coming out ahead. Number one, it's making up for the massive amount of losses that occurred during the government-mandated shutdowns. There were, I think you would recognize, all over the country, and much of it here locally, businesses that couldn't survive it at all closed down. Just couldn't do it. Well, it's unrealistic to believe you have two categories of businesses, those that couldn't make it and those that did absolutely fine with no struggles whatsoever. There is a spectrum there. And so many of the businesses, including big corporations, that did survive through it, took losses. Well, you have to make up for that. And so while you see it as a record profit when you look at a 5-year or a 10-year observation, and you balance that against the losses that occur, they may still be underwater to some degree. But secondly, when you work in inflation, a profit that is 5% higher than it was the year prior in terms of actual value can be less than it was. So when the numbers, you can look at the numbers and say, look at those evil corporate, look at them making all this extra money. That's why that's the money right there. That's where they are, or why they're raising the prices at the pump and raising the prices at the grocery store, is to get those record profits. Well, those record profits don't even equal oftentimes what the profits were the year before because of inflation. That's just called reality. It's funny because on the left, they keep trying to tout Wall Street and the stock market as doing so well, but then whenever they want to point the finger at corporations and find a scapegoat for inflation, they talk about how those numbers are actually horrible and bad. They really like to have it both ways. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care this month, which is rapidly coming to a close, half price on inspections on your air conditioner, and that isn't just, a little test of the temperature, like, yep, looks like it's not blowing as cold as it should be. Well, why is it not? What's the problem? What's the source of the problem? Not just the symptom of the problem. So much more than you're going to get at any sort of big box store doing a diagnosis or trying to sell you air conditioner in a can, which can actually do you much more harm and be much more expensive than it otherwise would be in order to get it fixed properly. So I would recommend, though, we're going to be rounding out the month, and if you call them in order to get that inspection done. And I would ask them, if you make the appointment now, even if you can't get in until next Monday or Tuesday, if that discount will still apply. I don't know if it will, but I would definitely check so that you could take advantage of that. A1 Custom Car Care. Well, thank goodness that while we've got the border crisis, we've got a drug crisis, we have an education crisis, we have a terrorism crisis, we have economic crisis, the Biden administration is on point and has honed in on the things that really matter, as the administration has announced Menstrual Hygiene Day for menstruators. Did you know this? This is good because, you're a lady, though I'm not trying to apply a
dare you just assume.
apply a label to you. You are a menstruating body, I guess. Birthing person. Yeah, that's what birthing person. That's what the that's what the Democrats have reduced women to. You're a birthing person. The U.S. Department of Labor announced a holiday called Menstrual Hygiene Day, a day that's aimed at creating a period-friendly world for menstruators. Now, notice, it's not for women. They're even going to take this away from you. This is for menstruators, okay? So it's not just women, of course. In a post on X, the Department of Labor shared a link to a blog post about Menstrual Hygiene Day and 5 ways that employers can make their workplace menstruation-friendly for menstruators.
What's the obsession with periods? Seriously.
I don't know.
They're not a fun thing.
People on the left are weird.
They're
just weird.
Is the biggest priority for them.
I mean, why do they do anything they do? Some stuff I guess you can figure out, but yeah, it's they have the weirdest obsessions. Actually, I think that this is a holdover from when they were portraying themselves as the party of women, and so that meant that they had to take care of women, and women needed, to be kept and taken care of because they couldn't take care of themselves. So there was this big push to free maxi pads here, free tampons there, free birth control here, and all this. But of course, now they have stripped away from women all of these unique aspects of being a woman and just call you birthing persons and call you menstruators, but they still try and utilize this component of you being kept as part of their marketing, I guess. I don't know. It's very difficult at times to keep up with the cornucopia of behavior that you get from the left. So this is what comes from the Biden administration. To commemorate this Menstrual Hygiene Day, the Women's Bureau is breaking down the stereotypes and stigmas that have made menstruation a taboo topic in the workplace. Menstruation is a natural part of half our population's life, and yet it has been overlooked in the context of work, perhaps because it is seen as a personal issue or uncomfortable to discuss. It couldn't be because it's just gross. It's just gross. And I know we're supposed to say it's not gross because, well, it's a normal bodily function. Well, so is diarrhea. But that doesn't mean that we just sit around and talk about it all the time. There are some things that human bodies do that are not pleasant. And to pretend as if every bodily function is just as pleasurable as every other one is ridiculous.
I've never once been on my period and been like, oh, guys, guess what?
Yeah.
I'm so happy I'm on my period.
I mean, it's just
it's gross,
wonderful.
It's uncomfortable, and I just don't understand why they do put it on a pedestal. All right, continue on.
So this is from the Biden administration, 5 ways that employers can create a menstrual-friendly workplace. So here, listen up, you employers and you employees. This, AKA a list of demands. 1, provide a sufficient supply of varied period products in bathrooms and ensure menstruators can access products privately. Again, notice this is their way of making sure that they don't erroneously label menstruating as something that only women can do. Number 2, allow flexibility in uniforms with options in dark colors to ensure menstruators do not need to worry that an unexpected period or heavier flow will lead to noticeable stains. For a division of the Biden administration that says that they are trying to push back against stereotypes of periods. They seem to be fulfilling a lot of them here. Number 3, allow scheduling and work flexibilities such as telework, flexible work hours, or shift modifications. 4, guarantee access to paid sick leave. Provide explicit guidance that menstruation is a qualifying condition for the leave, whether for symptom management or for related medical appointments, and ensure that employees and their managers are aware these are allowable reasons to use sick leave. Now, again, a stereotype that is has long been pushed back on, whether it's accurate or not, is like whenever a woman is not feeling well, what has always been like, what do you not say to that woman? Oh, are you PMSing? Or, oh, is it that time of the month? But here, now in an apparent reversal to stereotype, the Biden administration is saying that you should make sure everyone knows that if in fact they are maybe a little bit grumpy, or maybe women are, that it's probably the time of the month, and so you should allow them to have flexibility as to whether to even come into work. And 5, educate and train workers and managers about the symptoms of menstruation and how they can impact employees at work, and include support services for menstruation in any employee assistance program that is offered. So, do you think that's going to help you as a menstruating person, as a birthing person?
I mean, are you going to have to show proof so you can get those sick days?
Tim Carney with the Washington Examiner wrote, does Biden go around calling women menstruators? That's pretty creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy.
Another posting from Town Hall. Pro tip, only women menstruate. If you, quote, if you, all right, this is columnist Town Hall. If you bleed out of your penis once a month or even ever, get to the hospital immediately. You're welcome. The communications director for Josh Hawley, Abigail Jackson, wrote, I believe the word they're looking for is woman. This is such an illustration of the left and government and the complete nonsense that we get from it. And the, again, hypocrisy, if you will, the contradictions of, on one hand, saying that you are trying not to stereotype a certain something, while at the exact same time stereotyping that exact something. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. We have Author of the Week coming up in the next hour. It's a very important one, and it is specifically providing stories from young people who were tricked into believing that getting sex change operations would cure their teenage angst, would cure their depression, would make whatever emotional damage they had from sexual abuse all go away, and that if they did not do it, in fact, they would probably kill themselves. It's one of probably the most inhumane efforts that have been undertaken in this country and in the world. Now, fortunately, most of the world has realized how horrific this is. The United States is way behind the curve on this, and this is when you have one political party, the Democrat Party, that makes this part of their platform. It is very difficult to get away from, and so this book is all about the victims of that. The author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, so we'll have that in the upcoming hour. A text for you, Sarah, on the Pyramid Roofing Company Talk text line. I thought Sarah might like the fact that I got caught up in a heated discussion on Facebook last night with people who think it's okay to bring their dogs shopping with them. It kept making me think of Sarah, because you, of course,
Oh, that's
hate
my
that.
pet peeve.
You hate
That's
that.
my biggest pet peeve.
I almost took a pic. I don't even remember where I was, but somebody had a dog, and it was in a place that you'd think, well, this is a weird place to have a dog. There's some places I don't know. I get used to seeing them, and I almost took a picture to send to you, but I thought, well, they may be wondering, why are you taking a picture of my dog? So I did not do it. But so that text was specifically for you and your hatred of animals.
Yep, that's it.
I guess we've got news coming up in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. If you need a great home loan, there is an easy starting point for you. It's online. You can use your smart device, and that's iwantagreathomeloan.com. One of the great things about having friends in an industry is you sometimes get a little VIP service, right? You have maybe somebody that, they, whatever it is, sell cars, and you tell them, hey, I'm in the market. And they're like, well, come on over. I'll show you the new stuff before it gets on, or whatever. I'll show you where the really great deals are. And that's the benefit of being friends with people in an industry. When, I guess probably 10 years ago now, I decided we were going to move out of Springfield, buy a new home. I called, at the time, Don Carricker, and I was like, hey, I'm going to need a home loan. And he said, all right, well, iwantagreathomeloan.com. That is the VIP access. That is the system that has been set up to make it as easy as possible. So you go to iwantagreathomeloan.com, and there's a lot of information there that's just for you, even if you aren't necessarily ready to inquire. But if you are, you fill out some info. One of the characters or somebody from the team, they're going to reach out, get back to you very quickly, and then the process will start from there. And it's a lot easier than you may think. It's going to require you to, and they'll tell you, hey, you need these records. The app is very useful in that capacity, but they'll walk you through it, and you're just not going to find it with such white glove service, if you will, as you find it with iwantagreathomeloan.com. Coming up, Author of the Week. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Author of the Week, I mentioned, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, is focusing on the horrific attack on young people in grooming them to get sex change operations, preying on oftentimes their autism, preying on their sexual abuse history, preying on their emotional issues that really do need to be addressed, but instead telling them that sex change operations, that's their whole problem, and going so far as to winning over their trust and convincing them that they may kill themselves if they don't do this. It's in my lifetime, aside from abortion, I think it's one of the most widely accepted humanitarian attacks or attacks on human beings that we've seen. And many other countries in the modern world are recognizing this already. Here in the United States, there's one political party, however, that is continuing to push it. That's the Democrat Party. Going so far as to say you are extreme if you want to protect kids from this and instead help them in ways that are actually meaningful instead of destroying their bodies for the rest of their lives. So the author has and we're going to talk with here in a couple moments. These are her book are real life stories of real life victims, young people who were coaxed into this, who are convinced by, sadly, people that society tell us that you should trust. There's certain categories of people that have earned trust, and as a culture, we say these are people you trust: teachers, counselors, doctors. Unfortunately, it's those categories that oftentimes these predators, they get into these categories. And so by default, having a degree in one of these categories gives them that credibility, which makes them that much more dangerous. And then a lot of the LGBTQ plus organizations also act as predators in this manner as well. So an important book, Author, coming up, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. First, the latest news update. First Alert Forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10. Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny today, 81 for a high, 62 tonight. 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms Friday afternoon with a high near 72, and Saturday, chance for rain in the morning, then partly sunny, high near 78. Oh, 41. I'm Nick Reed. Thursday means it is Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, where you can, of course, go get any of the Author of the Week books that we have. And then we do have also, if you miss any past interviews with authors, you can go to KSGF.com in the podcast section, Author of the Week. It's a great resource for you as you try to decide what book is going to be the next book for you to read. And we have the author this morning, D-Trans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Mary Margaret Olahan is with us, and I want to thank you for being with us this morning. This is an issue that I talk about quite often on the show for a number of different reasons. And if we could start off, what prompted you, compelled you to write on this particular subject?
Well, it's a story, and I guess I should say stories that the establishment media don't want to tell. And, you know, in my job as a conservative reporter, I view that largely as my job to tell the stories that aren't being told. Establishment media leaves this huge hole in our media coverage where there's all these different stories, whether it has to do with COVID or abortion or coverage of Republican candidates or things like that that just are not told. And so when I started learning about detransitioners and how all these young people had gone through transitions or attempted transitions that they later deeply regretted, I thought, this is something that we need to dive into more. We need to share specifically their stories so that people can understand what they've been through. And I've truly believed that these stories are what is turning the tide on this gender ideology movement. You know, they're real stories. So that's what the book is. It's light on the commentary, heavy on the stories. And I really wanted to give people a good glimpse into exactly what happened, why these young people were motivated to seek such irreversible procedures, and what made them realize that it was impossible what they had attempted.
Well, let's talk about what motivates them. And to me, this is one of the most macabre and tragic aspects of this. Is it's not necessarily that we're talking about, otherwise healthy young people, but people who are in need. And they're sold what seems to me to be this horrific, irreversible, what they're told is a cure. And I can't imagine anything more devastating if you are already, whether it's because of abuse or bullying or whatever the reason may be, feeling very insecure, thinking that there is no hope, and then you're told by someone that is an authority, oh, there is hope, and then only to find out not only was that a lie, but you have done irreversible damage to yourself physically and emotionally. It just seems like one of the cruelest things that is imaginable. So what is it that you have found with these stories leads some of these young people into this decision that they feel is the best one for them and their mental health?
Yes, I found that many of these young people were first exposed to gender ideology on the internet. They were largely, and I'm generalizing here, so this isn't true of every single person, but these are just general themes that I've noticed. Oftentimes, these young people are struggling in school, they're lonely, they might have parents going through a divorce or one parent that's struggling with their mental health in a certain way. Often with the girls, there's some kind of assault in their background where they were assaulted by someone. And many of these young people have told me that they were on the spectrum, or they believe that they were on the spectrum, but they were never diagnosed. And what will happen is they are lonely, so they turn to the internet and they look for companionship there. And unfortunately, there are way too many predators online who are far too easily accessible for young people. And so they'll stumble on these pro-transgender groups or pro-transgender pages. And what they'll be told is, oh, you're lonely, you feel like you don't fit in. That's probably because you are in the wrong body. And once the young people latch on to this idea, they potentially become obsessive about it, which is something that many people who are on the spectrum experience, is more obsessive behaviors about certain things. And so they'll really fixate on this, and the activists will tell them, if anyone tells you that you're not a different gender, you're not transgender, then they hate you and they want you dead. And they really foster this attitude in these young people that they must be accepted by their families and their loved ones, or else their families and their loved ones hate them and want them dead, which is a very evil and manipulative thing to do. And part of the reason that I used this phrase gender ideology cult, because I think you can see the cult-like aspects in trying to cut someone off from everyone that they love that might try and stop them from attempting these gender transitions. And so oftentimes what will take place is that the young people will decide, all right, I am transgender, and they'll begin using a different name, different pronouns, and the school that they're attending will likely affirm them and affirm this change. And the children, because these are children that we're talking about when they're minors, they will go to their parents and say, I want to get these gender transition procedures because they need their parents' consent. Or they did until recently. Some places now will help the children facilitate gender transitions without parental consent. And so once the children go to the parents generally love their children and care about them. And we know for sure that there are parents out there who, for selfish and narcissistic reasons, will try and transition their child or tell their child that they're transgender in an effort to promote themselves, the parents. That's definitely something that we see happen, especially with young kids, like toddlers, who the parents claim are transgender. Right. But I think largely what we see is parents of, average Americans who love their children, and their kids come to them and say, I think I'm transgender. And the parents don't know what to do because they're not super politically keyed into the political conversations. And so what they do is they go to the doctor and they seek the help of medical professionals, such as therapists or doctors or mental health professionals. And almost always what they're told is you need to affirm your child or else they might be at risk of hurting themselves or committing suicide. And what all of these detransitioners told me when I was interviewing them was that their parents were asked, would you rather have a dead daughter or a living son? Or in the case of the boys, would you rather have a dead son or a living daughter? And that's a threat that's made to parents. It is intended to scare them and make them feel that if they don't affirm their child, their kid will kill themselves and it will be their fault. It's just a really horrible, horrible, evil lie that is sold to parents. It's not true. And so the parents, they're thinking, okay, well, the mental health professionals are telling me I have to do this or my kid will kill themselves. So they go along with it. And they consent to these procedures to be done. And often young girls will begin testosterone injections, which have really severe effects upon their muscle growth, their bone density, their hair, their skin, their emotions, their fertility, their sexual function. All of these things are very much impacted by the hormones. And then after a certain period of time, for the girls, there's an expectation that they will get a double mastectomy. And for most of these girls, they really haven't had an experience dating boys. They have never kissed a boy. Some of them had never even held hands with a boy. But these doctors and therapists are encouraging them to view themselves as, a completely different gender and to explore their sexual preferences when they might not even really have any yet, considering they're young teens and they don't really understand what they're getting into. And as their lawsuits are now saying, they weren't really able to fully give informed consent to these types of procedures, given that they didn't know what they were getting into. They weren't given all the information. And a lot of these hormonal injections are experimental, as the release of the WPATH files, the World Professional Transgender Health Association, has recently shown. The expose of those files showed that these supposedly expert doctors involved in WPATH know that the hormones are giving some girls tumors, and they know that the hormones are ruining some girls' fertility. And they know that some of these girls are not able to fully consent to the procedures because of their mental health issues, which, by the way, every single detransitioner had when they began this process. So we're seeing a whole bunch of lawsuits coming out recently of detransitioners suing their medical providers and saying, I was not able to fully consent to this. You lied to me. You pushed me down this path. And now I understand that all of this was manipulation and lies, and you were the ones that sold it to me.
We were talking with our author of the week, Mary Margaret Olahan. The book is Detrans, True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult. Our author of the week interview sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. One of the, what I understand anyhow, as I read more, particularly from the mouths of those who have been through this, is that they're told, well, this is all irreversible, that you don't have to worry about forever changing yourself. Essentially, there's no risk here, ultimately. Did you find when you interviewed these different young people who were detransing that they also had been led to believe that some of the changes were reversible, rather, if they changed their mind, or was that something that came up?
Well, for starters, we have to remember that these young people who are undergoing these transition procedures are largely deeply struggling with their mental health. So they're not in a good place to be understanding whether things are reversible or irreversible to begin with. But in many cases, they say that the doctors didn't really explain to them whether or not things were experimental or whether or not they were reversible. It was more of a matter of, you'll be happy if you undergo these transition procedures because it will relieve your gender dysphoria. So for the girls, many of these girls, they didn't understand that their fertility might be impacted. Nobody talked about that. And even if the doctors had explained that their fertility might be impacted, these are kids. So they don't understand what that means. Chloe Cole, for example, had never considered whether she wanted to breastfeed her children one day. it's just not something that little girls typically are thinking about or looking forward to. It's just not on their mind. But doctors didn't even bring this up to her when she got her double mastectomy. It was just, fast tracked, and
Right.
she went through the procedure, and now she no longer has breasts. And that's a huge implication for a woman, who she didn't know whether she even wanted to have a family one day. She hadn't really considered it. So that was taken away from her, and when she could not fully consent to it. But I think even worse than that, there were girls that there's been reports in the media that there were girls who didn't understand that their breasts were gone forever. There were some girls who naively, whether from naivete or from their mental health issues, believed their breasts would grow back. And that's the level of not understanding that was going on here, where these kids are thinking they don't understand biology apparently, but they also are thinking, oh, this isn't irreversible. This will come back. And you can see how it could be even worse with the hormones, which are injected into your body and have stealth implications that you might not be aware of for quite some time.
With your time writing for the Daily Wire, the Daily Caller, now senior reporter covering culture and politics for the Daily Signal, you clearly were aware of, to some degree, what was going on. Of course, that's what prompted you to write the book. Were there stories from some of these individuals that you found yourself thinking, man, I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was this bad?
Oh, for sure. I think I knew largely the big picture details of their stories, which are, of course, upsetting and very demoralizing. But for me, the hardest part of writing this book was to ask some of these really intimate questions about some of the most vulnerable moments. I made sure to ask everyone that had underwent a surgery, what were you thinking right before you went under? Do you remember? And, when you opened your eyes, who did you see and what did you think? And what was your drive home like? Things like that I think are really important for understanding where their head was at and what these moments were like for them. For Chloe Cole, for example, she told me that right before she went under, she was looking across the room and she saw this guy that was, a nurse or something, standing across from her, and he had this really weird expression on his face, and he was staring at her like he was very troubled. And she doesn't know what he was thinking, but she wondered at the time, or she wonders now, whether he was looking at her and thinking, what are we doing? This is a little girl that's about to undergo a double mastectomy. And then she went under, and she doesn't remember anything else because she did undergo a double mastectomy. Another really raw moment was Prisha shared with me that after her surgery, she also underwent a double mastectomy. When she woke up, her parents had to take her back to the hotel where she was going to recover because her surgery was done in an outpatient facility, so she couldn't stay there. And they took her back to the hotel, and she said they had Chick-fil-A that night. And she said she remembers it spilled in the car, and her dad was upset. And then they ate Chick-fil-A at the hotel. And she said that in the weeks following, her mom had to wash her wounds because they needed to be washed and dressed. And she said she couldn't raise her arms because of the recovery period, and she really needed help. And she described her mom washing her wounds for the first time, and she said they both cried. And they were both like deeply moved by this, which is so sad. You imagine this mother who loves her daughter and didn't know whether this was the right decision, and now she has to help her daughter through this next part. It's just tragic.
Yeah, you mentioned those files from that organization, and I read through some of those, and without getting too graphic, I remember a part that, again, even though I'm aware of what has been going on, but still it sort of stopped me in my tracks, and it was the acknowledgement that when there is the surgical attempt to reconstruct a male body part into a female body part, and how some of the individuals that this is done to, they have to on a daily basis tend to that, because what is happening is the body is trying to heal itself, and they are essentially forced to every day try and stop the body from healing itself. And there's just something about that, knowing that that's what your body is trying to fix what was done to it. And then you are instructed by medical professionals, no, you have to fight against your own body's attempt to heal itself.
Right. It's so wrong. And without getting too graphic, I think that type of story is really illustrative of how confusing this whole thing has become, where our body knows how to heal itself. Our body knows how to take care of ourselves. That was how our bodies were created to function. And yet we've come to this kind of Frankenstein point where some of our doctors and medical professionals have taken it upon themselves to try and craft fake or phantom body parts. And they don't work, and they try and heal. And that should be a good sign to us that these things are not meant to be. But unfortunately, we just keep pushing the envelope in that area.
Well, I appreciate you being with us this morning, and I appreciate the book as well, because I know that a lot of people, those that they do know this is wrong, and they have a sense of the manipulation that's taking place, but the horrors, and you're right, the Frankenstein style, this sort of it's a dark horror movie scenario where these people are just experimenting on living individuals and convincing them if they don't go through with it, then they may kill themselves. I just can't think of any darker moment in our history, and it seems as if the rest of the world they're slowly kind of figuring this out while we're way behind the curve on that. And we used to be a country that prided ourselves on being ahead of the curve with these sorts of things, particularly when it comes to science and medicine. So it's just such a horrible thing on a micro level and on a macro level. And I think it's important for people to read the stories of these real-life victims. Our author of the week, sponsored by ABC Books, Mary Margaret Olahan, the book "Detrans: True Stories of Escaping the Gender Ideology Cult." Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Tomorrow morning, broadcasting live, Friday Road Show from Scramblers, sponsored by Custom Shade Window Tinting, and it is also a free breakfast for veterans. If you're a veteran, 6A to 9A, come out and get that free breakfast. Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Serenity Honors, and Scramblers all together. Buying you breakfast Friday, tomorrow at Scramblers, 6A to 9A. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed. That First Alert forecast, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements, is from Color 10, Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Mostly sunny today, high near 81, cloud 62 tonight. A 70% chance of showers and thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon with a high near 72. And then on Saturday, there is a chance for rain in the morning, then partly sunny with a high near 78. A couple follow-up news items from our author of the week and the horrors of the targeting of young people, particularly those with psychological issues, and convincing them that they should get sex change operations and pump themselves with hormones. A judge, is from the Washington Examiner, is allowing a lawsuit to proceed against doctors who recommended a young girl transition to a boy. A North Carolina judge ruling that the now woman who was convinced to transition from a girl to a boy as a 16-year-old could proceed with a lawsuit against the so-called gender-affirming doctors who treated her. She's now 25 years old. Prisha Mosley filed her lawsuit back in July of 2023, suing multiple doctors who advised her to proceed with the sex change operation after she was diagnosed with various mental health disorders. Mosley suit accused the doctors of medical malpractice, civil conspiracy, negligent infliction of emotional distress, and unfair and deceptive trade practices, breach of fiduciary duty, rising to the level of constructive fraud, facilitating fraud, and fraud. Mosley recalled her experience of how doctors pushed her into becoming a boy and undergo surgeries with irreversible consequences, such as lobbing off her breasts. The suggestions, Mosley claimed, were part of the so-called treatment for the mental health problems for which she was diagnosed. Quote, by age 16, I was diagnosed with major depression, depressive disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and an eating disorder. I engaged in self-harm by cutting myself, which became so serious I was taken to the emergency room. Starting when I was 16 years old and continuing into my teen and young adult years, doctors and counselors set me on a path of medicalized gender transition. They told me that changing my body to look like a boy's body would cure my mental health problems. They told me that injecting large amounts of testosterone into my female body would be good for me. They also encouraged me to undergo surgery to remove my healthy breast. I trusted these healthcare providers to take care of me because of that relationship of trust and my vulnerable condition. I believe what they said, and I thought they were treating me properly. Years later, I realized I'd been lied to and misled in the worst possible way. Years of taking testosterone prevented my body from developing as it should have. It caused significant vaginal atrophy and the inability to have intercourse. My voice is permanently changed. I was no longer able to lift my voice and sing, which I used to love doing. I experienced severe pain in my shoulders, neck, and genital area. I do not know if I will ever be able to conceive and give birth to a child. As a result of the breast surgery, I have to live without my breast, and I'm unable to nurse a child should I be able to conceive one. I have pain in my chest where the breast should be. This is almost every aspect of this, and part of what our author of the week was talking about. It's just so cruel. And what compounds the cruelty is these victims, the people who are part of this movement, they try to shut them up. They try and prevent them from doing what they can to warn other kids about how they are targeted specifically. And this is something we've learned over the last several years. Young people with autism, of course, mental, emotional issues, and a significant portion of them also being victims of sexual abuse. And the cruel nature of not only grooming them into believing that this is the key to their happiness, but when it goes horrifically wrong, dismissing them, acting as if they are no longer relevant, not caring about them. And it shows that when some of these organizations and these doctors and psychologists, they claim that it's because they care. They care about the movement for whatever reason. They just want to be cutting edge, or they're buying into it because they're politically in line with those, that being the Democrat Party, who promote this sort of behavior. But it becomes clear that they don't actually care about the child. Think of it this way. If you have a child that has allergies and you care about that child, and the allergies are severe, and you decide, okay, well, here is an allergy medication that may work, and you give it to the child, and the child has a horrific reaction to it, becomes even sicker than that child was before. What would you do? Well, you would immediately stop giving that child the medicine. You would try to figure out some other way to alleviate the allergy problems that the child has, and then you would probably try and let other people know, hey, just so you know, this medicine had this adverse side effect. But that's not how these people who claim they care about young people behave whenever somebody who goes through these transitions has a horrific reaction to it. They don't try and help them. They don't try to figure out what is really the source of their problems and address that. They try and shut them up, or they ignore them altogether. That's not a compassionate individual. That's not someone who cares about the young person. And it isn't just those directly involved, which brings me to the next story. USA Today newspapers remove Senator Kennedy's op-ed piece on trans athletes. The op-ed, titled "Is Transgender Inclusion More Important Than Women's Sports?" was originally published on May 11th by 8 Louisiana-based Gannett papers. It's the same that owns the News Leader in Springfield. Multiple Louisiana papers that are part of the Gannett newspaper network, which owns USA Today, removed an op-ed about transgender athletes written by Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy. The message, "This content has been removed because it did not meet our editorial standards," which is laughable for USA Today to talk about editorial standards, is displayed on the website after users click on the link that originally contained the op-ed. Gannett opinion editor and vice president of standards and ethics, again laughable, Michael McCarter, said on Friday, "We recognize the importance of sharing varying perspectives and the vital role we play convening conversations. Senator John Kennedy's submitted opinion column did not meet our ethical guidelines, which states that we will treat people with respect. After further review, our editorial team removed the column from our website. Senator Kennedy has been given the opportunity to revise his language, not his viewpoint, to adhere to our standards," which, of course, one and the same. Now, this isn't talking about those who prey on the young people in order to get them sex change operations, but this is dealing with those who are continuing to force or attempt to force girls to take showers with, go to the bathroom with, and lose scholarships and athletic competitions to boys who claim to be girls. But the behavior is the same from those who push the agenda. They don't want opposition voice to be heard. They'll claim, oh, no, we support your right to give your thoughts and opinions as long as they aren't out of line with ours. And we're seeing this in what is sad, a country that once upon a time was the beacon on a hill when it came to free expression, free thoughts, free exchange of ideas, free press. That was one of the characteristics that really set us aside from so many other countries. That's why so many people admired the United States, wanted to come to the United States, because you did not have to worry about what you were saying. You did not have to worry about being censored. And specifically when it comes to the sciences and medicine, the founders discussed the importance of allowing for diverse opinions, even unpopular ones, for the sake of advancing the sciences, advancing medicine, recognizing that the minute you begin shutting down popular or rather unpopular opinions like, the earth revolves around the sun, you lose the rate at which you learn more. You lose that rate of acceleration towards a more understanding, educated, and enlightened society. And it's very telling that this consistent behavior by people who are generally anti-science and anti-medicine in terms of the scientific approach are the ones that continue to shut down people who have diverse perspectives when it comes to coaxing young kids with psychological conditions into sex change operations and trying to silence women and young girls who don't want to be forced to compete against and take showers with boys who change their name and wear a ponytail. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers now.
Thank you. Well, I want to read a review for the Pyramid Roofing Company. Lewis wrote, I heard about Josh and the Pyramid Roofing Company on KSGF for the last couple of years, and they truly lived up to their reputation. They went above and beyond. Our experience was nothing less than outstanding. Having a roof repaired isn't something you want to spend money on, but the Pyramid Roofing Company made the process so easy for my wife and I. Outstanding service from the Pyramid Roofing Company. See? Not a liar. They installed my roof about 3 years ago now, and they did make that process incredibly easy from just start to finish. The process only took a couple of days, and they were there every step of the way helping out with the insurance to even the design process. So if it is time for a roof inspection, or maybe you know it is time to go ahead and get a new roof, I highly recommend the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, you can give Josh and the Pyramid Roofing Company a call today. You can find all of that contact information under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
So while Donald Trump is having events like the one we saw recently in the Bronx where there's like 30,000 black Americans show up in order to have a really good time and to articulate why it is that they support Donald Trump, Joe Biden goes to Philadelphia and has to rely on the media doing tight shots of the crowd to make it look as if the venue is full. Unfortunately, you have some outlets like the New York Post and others that do a full shot, and what it showed is that they didn't come anywhere close to filling the venue, and so they pushed everyone up towards the front. That way the media could just shoot the crowd in a tight shot, not revealing the fact that, while, again, Trump has 30,000 individuals showing up, they can't even fill a relatively small venue. That being said, those who were there were treated once again to some of the articulate messaging of President Biden.
Promised we'd start to reconnect black, brown, and overlooked neighborhoods cut off by highways in the 60s, and decades of disinvestment as a consequence of it, including here in Philly. Well, we're changed that with the Recovery Act. Right now, you see all the construction going on the highways.
So it's as if he picks up in a different mid-sentence. He's talking, and then he's like, you can see the construction going on. Like, wait, what? It's. I guess this is dementia, is what it is. He also talked about FDR and the internet.
Access affordable, high-speed internet, because now internet is just as important as it was in the days of Franklin Roosevelt. Electricity was generations ago. We're delivering now because no child should have to do their homework at McDonald's when things are shut down. Sit in the parking lot with their parent to get it done.
Now, this is another stereotype that has been created by the Biden administration, that black people just go freeload off of Wi-Fi and internet at McDonald's, which is sort of a weird claim to make, given that Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, claimed that black kids don't even know what a computer is. So the fact that they somehow are able to recognize the utilization of the internet and know what the internet is and then go freeload off McDonald's, which isn't racist in any way, shape, or form. And then finally, Biden also saying this.
We'll never forget lying around and that's him lying around, actually.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is.
This guy.
They prep the audience ahead of time. Now, if he just gets lost, everyone laugh, because that's what happens. When he gets lost and confused, then they all start just laughing. He also told them that Donald Trump wants to gas them. And repeated the false claim that he gassed black people at a church so that he could do a photo op with a Bible. This is one of the many claims that Joe Biden has made in the past that has been debunked over and over again, even by left-wing outlets. He also made some very bizarre statements. He asked the crowd at Philadelphia, quote, "What do you think Trump would have done on January 6th if black Americans had stormed? Think about this. What do you think would have happened if black Americans stormed the Capitol? I don't think he'd be talking about pardons. This is the same guy who wanted to tear gas you as you peacefully protested George Floyd's murder." So the latter part of that, again, is, of course, not true. But so what are you, I don't even know what the point is there. Is he claiming that if black people had stormed the Capitol, then that would have been okay? Or it's just, again, the bizarre rantings of a senile old man who is confused and who has been told, we just have to make race an issue here. We have to get blacks back in line so that they understand where their place is, and that is with the Democrats, regardless of quality of life, regardless of the standard of living that they experience in Democrat-run cities. They've got to be whipped into line, and so that's what Joe Biden is doing out on the campaign trail. It's very, very inspiring.